So,
Hey, witches.
hi, hello, welcome back to another history episode.
Hello. So I put this in the um episode description, but I'm also going to just say it out loud. Trigger warning. This particular witch trial has a lot of racism, politics, and there is a death by hanging of
Oh,
a person
so
of
today's
color.
time?
Yeah. So I wanted to put that out there. Um, but this is the trial, and so I also am going to put out a not trigger warning but annoyance warning, I guess, for lack of a better term. I only looked up how to pronounce the two main people's names. So there are a lot of names in here, and a lot of them are like African.
Oh, so it's going to be real hard.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the trial of Bereg Lerotholi and Gabashane Masupha. Um, so setting the scene, this is a village um, with in Africa. I'll get to the more details of it later. But there is a ravine just past the village with a pool in the bottom. And in said pool, like it's like a muddy, it's not like a swimming pool, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
pond kind of vibe. Um, there is a body laying face down, half naked and muddy. It's the body of a young man with epilepsy, Melike Natai, and 2 days ago, on March 4th, 1948, he was alive. So, he is, first of all, we're in the 1900s now, so we are like getting to like fairly modern times. Um, this boy went to a funeral with his cousins. They rode their they rode their horses um, to the funeral, and they're on their way home when this happens. Um, they repeatedly say that they wear blankets, but it's like ponchos. It's like the thing with the hole just for their head, but there's no armholes. It's just open. Um, but they call it blankets repeatedly in this book, which, by the way, if you haven't been following this series, is Witchcraft: A History in 13 Trials by Marian Gibson. This is chapter 11. I don't want to know.
Jesus Christ. Sorry. Okay. Sometimes when I wear these headphones, I don't realize how big I am or like how loud I can get because I don't hear anything and there's like soundproofing kind of stuff. Uh, Will just sent me and he goes, "This is the Lord Ruler. Looks more or less like Dracula."
Ah, so he can hear us.
Bitch, bitch, wait for the damn episode to come out.
He's gonna text you in a second and be like, no. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Maleke.
Sorry, I was really confused for a second. I was like, "Holy God!"
Um, so they're it's like nighttime, right? And they're riding home from this funeral. Um, but he gets like left behind. Nobody really, I don't really know why. That's never like addressed. But his cousins gallop on ahead and leave him behind. And then someone, question mark, many someone's, question mark, comfort him out of the dark, or so the villagers told police. They heard a car, horses, and men on foot. So the horses were probably his cousins galloping away. Um, but then they heard a car as well. And all of a sudden, Amaleke is dead. And then when the police turn his body over, they discover that his lips are missing. Just his lips. They're missing. Um, so this has been categorized as a murder because to them, it looks like one of a series of murders that have been committed throughout the past decade or so. Um, where the body parts of victims are cut off and then used to make magical charms. This is not, they didn't believe it to be the work of a serial killer, but of multiple magical practitioners. Um, and they, in the local language, they were called the Lerotholi murders. Lerotholi is a name for charms made of animal horns, body parts of lions, bulls, birds, and people that have been burned to ashes and mixed with fat. Um, so they labeled the British are trying to colonize this area right now. And
Shocker.
they label the Lerotholi users witches or witch doctors.
Shocker.
Uh-huh, yes. Um, and they think that these people are making these charms to help fight against the colonists, basically. The people who made these charms did think that this was possible, but they did not believe that Lerotholi was evil. They, in their minds, it was helpful, protective, healing, and it was like powwow magic. So it was like a positive, helpful thing. But the white Christian missionaries who were coming to Africa did not agree when when they thought of it. All magic was demonic. Any type of magic was not a good thing. It was bad. Um, Unfortunately for this tribe, they did use human body parts in their magic, but it had a complex history. So in the 1800s, they fought the Zulu, the British soldiers, and South African settlers for their country. And they would use already dead enemies that died in the war, like in the combat. They would use parts of their bodies, sever them and burn them and mix them into ointment that was believed to transfer the opponent's strength into their own warriors. And the colonial authorities blamed their indigenous leaders, specifically the district governors, which are called Morena, which means headmen or kings. But they also have a queen regent in this country. I forgot to look up her name. But it's Amatsibo Amelia. And she is multiple times accused of using or paying others to use this type of magic to further her political agenda. But this witch trial is not about her. It is about two of Masutoland's most powerful Morena, Bereg, Lerotholi,
Yeah.
and Gabashane Masupha. These were both like celebrity politicians. So they're both charismatic, they're both beloved by their people. Bereg is quiet and decisive. Gabashane is quick-witted and outgoing. They drive nice cars. They're dressed like in elegant clothes. They drink fine wines. They are like career politicians. So when I'm talking about like a village in Africa, for those other Americans who are thinking that I'm talking about like mud huts and like older times Africa, that's not this. This is not that. This is like a civilized country. So don't be racist. Plus, we're in the 1940s. So, like, get your history together. This World War II is going to happen during this. So, get it together. In the mid 1940s, Bereg is embittered and saddened because he was related to the previous king who died, and the queen regent took over, and a court agreed that she had the right to do that on behalf of her heir. So she's the regent for her child, and he is pissed. He feels cheated, and he starts looking for allies against the queen regent. And he finds Gabashane Masupha. Um, he is.
That
They're
just
not
sounds like a
obvious
fun name to
allies.
say.
Yeah, they're not obvious allies because Gabashane had been the king's aide, um, and so he was on the side of the queen at first, but since then they had fallen out, and he had been described as obsessed with the color bar, um, and challenging a ticket collector on a racially segregated South African train. When the ticket collector interrupted the queen's meal on the train, Gabashane shoved a handful of meat from the meal into the man's face, furiously exclaiming, "Have some," which embarrassed the queen. And instead of being grateful for him sticking up for her, she like reprimanded him, and because she was afraid of like political issues. Um, then couple of years later, or a year later, Gabashane was tried for assaulting one of his subjects, and his queen took the prosecutor's side. He very narrowly avoided jail. So now he is also mad at her, and they team up, allegedly.
Great.
So they both start kind of building their backers. Like they start building up little group of people against the queen. And maybe they do seek magical charms. But they're both Catholic. So it feels
The
unlikely.
crucifix? The crucifix?
It feels unlikely that they would go to like, and I'm using quotes here because I think that this is a racist term in this specific story, but they turn to witch doctors. It seems weird that they would do that being a part of the Catholic Church, which severely frowns on that.
Yeah.
Just doesn't seem likely, but maybe, I don't know. The bishop even backs them, because the bishop of the Catholic Church in this country feels like the colonial government wants to do away with the native government. Some of the British officials did want that. Others were more like, no, let's build up the local government so they can be self-governing, like a self-governing part of our country. But in any event, they're like fighting back against this. Then another threat pops up. South Africa is like, hey, we want that country.
Of course.
And they are like, there's the threat of an invasion from them, which would be even worse than the British invasion. As all of this tension increases, so do the murders. There are 17 witchcraft murders reported in 1947 and 25 in 1948. They're like alleged to be done by multiple different leaders, and like they're all kind of framed as political crimes. But in March 1948, the discovery of Maleke Ntai's body basically blows everything up. Everything starts imploding. It's awful. A medical examiner, Dr. Robert Ogg, um, does an autopsy and decides that he has been murdered, as the villagers alleged. But he's like, yes, he's been murdered. But it also could have been that he had a seizure because he had epilepsy, right? And fell into the pool and accidentally drowned. Aside from his lips being removed, there were no obvious signs of violence on his body, and there were crabs in the pool that could have eaten his lips. So the medical examiner's like, it was murder, but it also could have just been a total horrific accident. I don't know. Um,
I'm gonna Google that. Do crabs eat lips?
um, there are multiple people that are initially blamed. There's a local witch who's blamed, and then Amaleke's cousin is blamed. And then there's a disturbing theory emerging that um, this was a contract killing, that Bereg and Gabashane contracted someone to murder Amaleke to provide Lerotholi ingredients for them. Um, this is like a super crazy charges, and it would be like a really controversial thing for these two men, these two like leaders of their community, to be um accused and detained for something like this, but they are.
Uh, do you know what kind of crabs?
No, it just says crabs. African crabs. I don't know.
Coconut crabs can.
Okay,
Only
well,
if it's incapacitated and the person is unable to do anything about it.
yeah, I mean, well, he's dead, so.
Some people believe coconut crabs ate Amelia Earhart that crashed in the ocean.
Hmm.
I don't know what coconut crabs are, local to,
Africa.
yeah, I'm about to find that out.
Okay. So in July of 1948, there were charges brought against these two men based on the evidence of Crown witnesses. That was the book's quotations, not my own. Some of Amaleke's cousins and villagers living near the crime scene, um, and also a few officials that worked for Bereg and Gabashane. These people identified themselves as accomplices in murdering Amaleke and incriminated others in return for clemency. So, and this is also not a transparent process. Like, it's very like wishy-washy. They're taking the word just went out of my head, word of mouth as like evidence and all kinds of crazy stuff. Um so all of these, or they're charged with ordering and carrying out the murder of Amaleke Natai, and because of this, they're like, hey, if we're going to do this, we might as well go after the queen too. So she was accused of a different murder. There was not enough evidence to convict her of any murders. Um, so they end up having to like give up on that. But it was like a very big deal. Um, so on August 3rd, 1948, Gabashane and Bereg are summoned to preliminary hearings. Um, this is a pretrial hearing before a British district commissioner. Two of Gabashane's half-brothers, Jonathan and Mapashoni, accuse him and Bereg of ordering Amaleke's murder and drawing them in as accomplices. They talk about a secret planning meeting. They say that he was captured and throttled into unconsciousness, although there was no physical evidence of that. And then another accomplice cut off his lips while he was still alive. Another witness said that Bereg ordered this in person, but then that he rejected the flesh because it did not bleed enough. And then he told the group to throttle Amaleke to death. And in this country, ordering a murder is treated and tried the same way as actually carrying out a murder. So the district commissioner is like, yeah, you're gonna stand trial. Like this, we're taking this to court. So they do. Um, Meanwhile, jumping back a few days, on July 30th, a new proclamation was issued by the British Basutoland government requiring Lingaka, which are what the witches are called in their language, to obtain a £5 license.
A 5 pound license?
Yeah, like money, £5.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
The British.
Yes. So this is basically a way of tracking the people that are performing magic and a way of that for them to accuse people of things. Um, and it's a more bureaucratic witch hunt based on verifiable physical killings. Um, but there's not actual evidence of magic happening. So between the preliminary hearing and the start of the trial in November 1948, Bereg and Gabashane are held in Masuru jail. Um, on the 2nd of November, they are driven to the capital's high court, where George Sutton, a retired judge from the Supreme Court of Africa, um, along with 2 native and 2 European assessors and translators, will decide the case. There was no jury.
Oh,
The
oh, okay.
Basutoland Attorney General Arthur Thompson prosecuted, while N.J. Grobler defended his long-term client Bereg, and Israel Maisel of Johannesburg, who would one day defend Nelson Mandela, represented Gabashane. Um, First, the prosecutor goes in and he's like describing Lerotholi and how these murders could provide body parts for the charms, and that there was lots of evidence that people were being killed for these purposes. He shows medical reports of how wounds have been inflicted before death, how they would bleed people, how they would take severed limbs and heads and use them in charms. And he is doing all of this to build up to the fact that Amalekei's murder was the same. And he might have been right, but when he calls Dr. Robert Ogg, the medical examiner, to the stand, he is visibly distressed, and he kind of is like wishy-washy about whether or not this was for sure a murder or not. Because, there's the crab theory. And also him and one other physician examined the body and found no signs of any assault. So the defense counsels, both of them, take this and run with it. They're like, how do you know? This could have been not real. And eventually they talk him into saying the injuries I found on the body were caused by crabs. Like
It is highly unlikely.
it yes, correct. It was highly unlikely, but they eventually talk him into saying it.
Was like, here's the thing though. They only do that if they are like incapacitated in some shape or form. The fact that there was no like markings on him suggesting that he was dead, and only his lips were gone.
Yeah, well, they're saying that like because he has epilepsy, like he had an epileptic fit, fell in the water and drowned, and then the crabs chewed his lips off. But also, he wasn't in the pool for that long. Like it was just a few hours, so it it's highly unlikely. This was most likely a murder. Um, or maybe he did fall in the pool from epilepsy and drown, and then someone cut his lips off from, like, you know
They're
what I
like,
mean?
oh,
Like,
this guy's already dead. Like, that's
right. Who knows?
opportunistic.
But in any event, like these defense attorneys are like, so if he hasn't definitely been assaulted, he did not definitely have his lips severed by a knife, and he drowned. Was this a murder? Um, some of the prosecution evidence was more concrete. Um, And the prosecutor was also like, this pool that he fell into was pretty far from his route home, so probably not. Someone unsaddled his horse, took some of his clothing. Like, it seems likely that he was kidnapped. And some of the witnesses that claim to be accomplices admit to having done this and murdering him. In mid-November, Gabashane takes the witness stand. They take the tack of attacking his accusers. So they are like, they're bad characters. And he starts pointing out flaws in their evidence. So, for example, the other witnesses described that Amaleke's lips were severed on the left-hand side, but the post-mortem documents show that the right side of his lips were missing. They said that his car was at the crime scene, but his car was at a shop being serviced at the time. He talks about how Mapashoni was claiming that he had good relations with his wife, but she had actually left him not too long before this. So, like, he's basically, like, rebutting all of their claims. But unfortunately, due to blatant racism, all of the evidence against them was being published in the white-run newspapers, but his refutal of the evidence was not published. So the British justice system and the British media were primed to believe that these two black men did this. So it's so fucked up. On the morning of November 16th, all of the accused, the Morena, so the two men and their at least 10 accomplices, were herded into the dock for the verdict. Each one wore a metal sign around his neck, with a big, like a plate with a number on it. And they literally liken it to like a slave auction.
Oh yeah, that's exactly the feel I was getting.
Yes.
That's fucked up.
And apparently this is often the practice in mass trials of accused black people in South Africa. These are two respected politicians. So, like, yeah. It was,
that
like,
seems like a hate crime.
Yeah. So now these men are standing on this thing waiting for the verdict from their white judge.
Who's probably racist.
Mm-hmm. And even though there were multiple inconsistencies in the evidence and everything, he says that the two of the witnesses were substantially in agreement, and he cannot believe that their story was concocted, so the accused will be found guilty of murder.
Of course.
And so the defense teams are like, well, fuck. And they're like, they get to make one final statement, right? Each of the accused get to make one final statement. And they're going to use this statement as an argument of why the death penalty should not be chosen, because that is typically the punishment for this type of crime. So Bereg stands up and tells the court, this matter is merely a lie to establish as to how, or the prosecution failed to establish how the deceased met his death. I stand much higher than to condescend to such a thing. I am the second son of the late Paramount Chief Griffith. I am proud of my position, and no dead flesh could improve upon it. So he goes on to say to the judge, if you are satisfied with this evidence, do as you wish, but as for the case, it has been concocted. And basically he's like, this is bullshit. You're an idiot. But do you, boo. Um, and then Gabashane stands up and barely says anything. He literally stands up, says, "My senior brother has said all that is necessary," and sits back down. Um, George Sutton, being a white British judge, is unmoved by this. He puts on the black cap that's reserved for the moment of sentencing and condemns both Bereg and Gabashane plus two of their accomplices to death. So they are driven back to the jail and they're like talking to their defense teams. They're going to appeal. They're going to take it to the Privy Council in London. The council is not an appeals court, but there are lords who staff it, and they can intervene in the legal process and stop executions or reverse verdicts if they feel there had been an infringement of justice. So the case is heard in Britain's capital. Bereg and Gabashane are represented by the lawyer Dinglefoot, who is a long-term critic of colonial law.
That is amazing.
Yeah. But even though they're being represented by this lawyer and their case is being heard by the Privy Council, they're not permitted to attend in person. I'm just going to let that sink in. This is a hearing to rehear their trial, and that's basically sentencing them to execution, and they're not allowed to attend in person. And this was before virtual attendance was a thing, okay? So like they weren't allowed to attend, period. This case takes many months to prepare, and they spend that time back in the Maseru jail. Their case is heard in July 1949. So this is a year later, right? Like this all started in July 1948. This is a year later. They are still in fucking jail, waiting to find out if they're going to be killed. And
yo, at that rate, you know what? Just I'm done.
Yeah, fuck it. I'm over it. So Dinglefoot is fighting for his clients' lives. He is talking about how the medical evidence was inconclusive. The accomplice witnesses were unreliable. And some of the witnesses had retracted their statements and alleged that they were coerced into making accusations. Some claimed they were offered bribes. They were told to get together and make sure that they said the same thing. One of Amaleke's cousins was told that he should say that the chief, Gabashane, had offered him money to kill his cousin if he accepted. If he accepted and said that he would not be charged with murder. And apparently the law in this country required independent evidence to prove that the deceased had been murdered. And Dingle argued that the medical examiner's opinion did not do that because he was like waffling. And so these lords take several months to examine the case. So several more months in jail. Then they conclude that Amaleke Natai had definitely been murdered. The motive they stated was the gathering of Lerotholi flesh, and Bereg and Gabashane had clearly ordered the killing, therefore their conviction would be upheld. The colonial administrators praised their lordship's ingenuity in distinguishing this case and all these things. Like they're getting praised for this shit, but like intelligent people are like, what the fuck? And there were like petitions and protests, and in London, the Reverend Michael Scott, who is an anti-colonial clergyman, led a campaign petitioning the church to step in. And back in their own country, Basuto land, some of their followers are taking action. They attempt to rescue the men from jail on July 28th. A crowd of prisoners in the jail overpowers the gate guards and drag Bereg and Gabashane to the entrance to like get them to run away and escape, but they refuse. They say it is beneath their dignity to run from the jail as fugitives. Instead, they turn away from the open gates and walk back to their cells.
Nice.
A few days later, on August 3rd, 1949, Bereg, Gabashane, and the two unnamed accomplice witnesses were hanged. The international press reported their deaths as punishment for using parts of a body for witchcraft. But Bereg wrote a final letter, which was published by a journal that I did not look up how to pronounce, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. He said, "It is untrue these cruel murders are committed by the chiefs. The government has found a trick by which the chiefs can be taken by surprise and killed under the pretext of law." He called this injustice genocide, and in the 1990s, Gabashane's widow, Amamate, told historians that Bereg was justified in his outrage. Amamate's view was that both Bereg and her husband were executed as witches by a government that hated enlightened Morena. So the police basically had been instructed to find a scapegoat. And so this is the widow. Again, the widow in 1990 said this. So, like, this is recent. And so basically this is colonialism at its finest, and racism also at its finest.
Oh,
and,
so current.
Yeah. It's not over. It's still happening, y'all.
Yo, so. I bought a new t-shirt and I sent it to you. I think.
You did?
Yeah, I bought that.
I don't remember.
It's fucking rude.
The last picture of a t-shirt I remember you sending me is the one that I got you.
Oh.
But yeah, that's the end of the trial of Gabashane and Bereg.
I didn't send it to you.
I didn't think so. I didn't think so.
Well, I just sent it to you.
Okay.
It's the front of the shirt says they didn't burn witches, they burned women, and then it's basically all the way from 1910 how women like lost.
Oh yeah.
Like were gaining their rights, so it starts then and it goes through up and then at the end it says we have to fight for it all over again 2025.
Yep. I like it.
It was expensive.
Probably.
But that's fine. Anyways.
All right.
Well, until next time.
Bye.